Before the next episode of X Job Downloaded starts, I have a big favour to ask. If you've enjoyed any of our episodes so far, please can you click on the follow button on your platform. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon and YouTube. It costs nothing to follow, but makes a real difference to me as a podcast producer. Thank you. This interview is being tape recorded. My name is Paul Maleary and this is X Job Downloaded, and today I'm going to interview Janet Percival. Now, Janet is a former police officer who dealt with some of the vilest criminals in the country. She dealt with one individual who has continued to commit his crimes and be vitriolic in the way that he behaves. Janet, thank you so much for joining me today. Where did it all begin for you, and what was your inspiration to join the police service?
I'd always wanted to be a police officer. My uncle retired as chief constable, so it was in our blood as such. When I was 18, I tried to get into Surrey Police. They told me to go away and get some life experience. And it took me until I was 38 to actually get that life experience and then join
Wow.
the police. Yeah. But looking back at it, at 18, I wasn't ready. You know, I was a kid, really. I wasn't ready to join the police. I had to go and getting that life experience helped me with with dealing with people in the police. So in 1996, I went back to school basically and got some qualifications because I left school with no qualifications. And I put an application form into Nottinghamshire Police and I went for my very first fitness test. And they said, I remember signing this form saying, if this fitness test results in death, Nottinghamshire Police cannot be held responsible. And I thought, what the hell am I signing up for? Anyway, the PT instructor was ex-military. And he was doing press-ups on the stage. You can imagine the type of man he was. Press-ups on the stage. This is what I wanted to do. Right. Anyway, I failed. I failed that fitness test. So they told me you can't reapply for 18 months. So I thought, what can I do? I became a special constable. And so I became a special. Every Friday and Saturday night, I was there 4 hours, voluntary, on the streets, getting some experience. Kept reapplying for Nottinghamshire Police and I kept failing the same thing. The last one that he said to me, Ray, this fitness instructor says, if you'd done 5 more press-ups, Janet, you'd have got in. Why couldn't you tell me that? Anyway, they then told me, you're in a catch-22 because you're coming on doing it voluntary every weekend. Why should we then take you on and pay you? So I tried Derbyshire Police. I failed the spelling test on that because one of the words they said was ricocheted. And I said to them, I remember saying, when is a member of the public ever going to say that the bottle ricocheted off my head? Because they said you need to be able to spell to do your statements, because at that point I didn't know I was dyslexic. So spelling was a big thing. South Yorkshire was a fitness test again. I nearly passed out because I forgot to breathe. Then my brother said to me, Sussex Police are recruiting and basically they take anybody. I went, thank you for that, brother. I went down there and I passed the fitness test because they had an assault course. Their fitness test was not the standard one now that everybody, the entire country does this one standard one. They had an assault course, which was climbing over things, dragging out sandbags out of cars, things that you would do in the job. And I passed that. I passed. So in 2003, I got into Sussex Police. So that's where it all started. I was located in Brighton, and that was a town where probationers either lasted or they didn't. I remember when I got independent patrol, my inspector came with me with a pile of jobs that big and went, there you go, Percival, get on with it.
No.
Yeah. And in those days, I mean, you were in long before me, but I wasn't allowed to get in a car until the new probationer came on the shift. So I was made to walk everywhere. Imagine and I think that. I did a TikTok video saying, the police has changed so much. Today, people would be crying, saying, "You can't make me walk." You know, I'm putting a complaint in. But I was made to walk. I was made to make the tea. I was made to do everything until the new probationer came on the shift, and then I was promoted. I was still a probationer, but I was promoted. So I lasted about 16 months in uniform, and then said, I want to be a detective. I always wanted to be a detective, and I was put on a burglary team in CID, Acquisitive Crime Team in Brighton. And then in 2006, I said, I want to transfer to Nottingham. My DI, she says, why do you want to go there, Janet? You're going to get shot. Because at that point, it was known as Shottingham. And she said, hide behind cars, Janet. That's what you need to do. Hide behind cars. I went, OK, Mum, I'll do that. And so 2006, I transferred and back into uniform because I hadn't done my TD. I hadn't taken the NIE then.
Oh, I see.
Because so in Sussex Police, they advertised it every kind of month. Anybody wants to do the NIE, sign up. And I thought, no, I'll wait till I get to Nottinghamshire Police. But Nottinghamshire Police were a whole different ball game. They didn't advertise the NIE. So because I wasn't a detective, I was still uniform. I went back into uniform in Broxtowe. And Broxtowe was at that point in 2006. I don't know if you've heard of Colin and David Gunn, but they had just gone to prison at that point.
Right.
Broxtowe was predominantly white, second most underprivileged town in the UK, area in the UK. Lots of unemployment, lots of uneducated, didn't finish school. And I'd gone into Beirut, basically. I was one female on a team of 6 with one sergeant. And I'd come from Brighton, where they were a team of 16 with 2 active sergeants and an inspector that came out. Now I was the only female on this team. Wow. And I remember going to my first job there. I was with my colleague. He has his hands in his pockets. And we walked up to this bloke that was basically throwing whatever he could off his balcony at us. And I was going, where's our backup? And he went, it's just me and you. I went, oh, fantastic, fantastic. And the LAC inspector said to me, give me 12 months, Janet, give me 12 months and I will authorise your transfer anywhere within the police. I lasted 6. I got interviewed for Acquisitive Crime Team again and went to CID in, where did I go? Ox Close Lane, which is another part of Nottinghamshire, Bestwood area. So I did take the NIE then. I was still a PC in plain clothes. Ended up going into integrated offender management when that first came out.
Yep.
Lasted the inspector of the DI. He just said to me, "You'll be back after a month, Janet. You'll be back." And I wasn't. I was there like 4 years, so it wasn't a month. Had enough of that. Went back into uniform. Got my blues then.
Yeah. Passed
my blues. Could drive to put the lights on. And then in 2014, I said, I've had enough. I want to go back into plain clothes, and ended up going on public protection.
Right.
So then did my NIE, passed first time. That was the longest 3 months of my life studying for that exam. Went on the Paul Connolly, help you get through this.
Yeah. Checker. And what? Checkmate or checker. He used to do the sergeant's exam as well.
Yeah, he did that. Yeah, and I passed first time, which really surprised me. I remember opening up the thing and it come, and the sergeant, she stood by me. She says, "What is it? What is it? What is it?" And it goes, "It says successful." And she went, "Wow, no tears." And then I burst into tears. She went, "Oh, we've got tears," because all in my head was, I've got to pick those books up again next week. Yeah. I've got to pick those books up again. It is hard exam. It's hard. I think it's harder than the sergeants because it's a recognised qualification. The NIE is one you can take out with you. Once you've got your PIP, 2, you can take that out with you and pick up other jobs. So I completed the PIP, and that's another tale on its own. And while I was still a TDC, they were giving me complex crimes to investigate. You know, I ran an honour-based violence crime. I ran a BDSM case together on my own. Keep going to my sergeant and saying, look, and no, Danny, you don't need any help. You're doing a cracking job.
Grown up, you see, that's why. You were a grown up, weren't you? You were.
Yeah, because I could talk to people.
Yeah.
You know, I would go and, you know, I'd have my tutor with me. But to be fair, my tutor was an older chap and he'd been in the job like 15, 20 years. You know, so he knew what he was doing. But then when I went out with some of my younger colleagues, they would always look at me. People would look at me, and that younger colleague may have been in 5 years longer than me, but they'd come to me. And I don't know if you know this, but people with dyslexia are good communicators, so we can speak to people. And I always spoke to people. I mean, I think I was assaulted in my career 5 times, and they were minor things. I got spat at. Somebody stood on my foot, and I had to go and nick him for police assault. And I said to my sergeant, why?
Yeah.
Go and nick him, Janet. And I did, and we ended up in court over that. And I think somebody pushed me, somebody twisted my arm, and I got £100 compensation for a twist of the arm, but never to the extent that cops are getting assaulted now. You know, they've lost the art of communication. So I was in public protection for 10 years. And my last 2 years, I became a mentor in public protection. So I was on the DV, domestic violence team, and I was mentoring the new people that are coming through. So PIP level 1 officers that have to do attachments to public protection, I'd mentor them. The civilian investigators, I've been mentoring those. But stalking, I know this sounds strange, but I love stalking. I'd love to get into the head of a stalker. I got the first stalking protection order in the country for a non-domestic related stalker. Wow. My old force, Sussex, got the domestic one on the same day. We went head to head into court on the same day to try and get the first one. I got the non-domestic one and they got the domestic one. And I was successful in most of my stalking cases. They all ended up with a custodial sentence, because the one we're going to talk about, Mr. Belfield, wasn't the only stalker I dealt with. He wasn't. And it was just their mentality. You know, I'd always ask the same question at the end of any interview. Are you going to leave this person alone? And I'd get the same answer, not until I know they're safe from everybody else in the world. And I just want them to tell me it's over. And I'd say, they've told you in a message. Yeah, but they haven't told me to my face. Yeah. So I don't kind of believe them until I see them. And they all had that kind of thing, except for Alex Belfield. He was a different kettle of fish.
I'm going to take you back, because I'm going to take you back to the very beginning. All right, we'll come on to Alex, because when you went to Brighton, or was it Brighton you went to as your first name?
Yes. Yeah.
So you'd never lived in that area, had you?
No, but I am from Surrey, so I knew Brighton. We visited Brighton, but no, I'd never policed anywhere in my life apart from being a special constable. And to be honest, I didn't know anything really about policing until I became, a warranted officer as such. So no, that was my first station and my first real go at being a police officer.
And you're an older member of the public that's joined, aren't you? You know, compared to some of the people that are there.
Yeah, I'm not old, 38. I wouldn't class as old, but I'm not 18. I'm not a young person going straight into the job. No.
What was that like, walking through that door, taking your position in the parade room with a variety of people, I would imagine, but you've got youngsters, you've got older people. What was that like for you as Janet walking in there for the very first time?
If I'm honest, it wasn't easy because they treated probationers differently in those days. I mean, I was called pond scum at one point. I won't talk to you until you're confirmed to ranks.
No.
You know, I won't. Yeah, one called me pond scum, and he was from Nottingham. He was actually from Nottingham. So I thought we'd have a mutual thing going. I remember one incident where somebody walked into the police car and basically fell on the floor. And I thought I'd killed him. I thought that's the end of my career. And I'm on the radio, and instead of doing it point to point, I said I can't remember what the pollock. I've had a pollock. I think I've killed somebody. So the whole force knows now what I've done. Sergeant comes out, everybody comes out. This bloke wouldn't stay. And in my head, I'm thinking I've hurt him. And my sergeant said to me, Janet, he was pissed. And he's got up and walked off. He walked into your car. But when I walked back to the nick, this one officer was putting these gloves on and saying, we need your uniform, he's dead. And I just burst into tears. I burst into tears. But I took the crap and I proved myself. And eventually, you know, they did speak to me. But I think it wasn't my age. I think it was more because I was a probationer rather than an older lady joining this group, because there were older people than me in there that had been in like 20 years, you know, or so. So, and I have this attitude that I don't care what you say to me, I'm going to do this. You know, you're not going to put me off. Like the inspector coming with this big pile of jobs and say, get on with it. And I got on with it. And when I went to him to get a reference for Nottinghamshire, he said to me, oh, Janet, what do you want me to write? Because I only write things about people I'm going to bin, and I haven't written anything about you. So that really, I know that's a horrible thing to say, that he only kept notes on people he wanted to get rid of, but he didn't want to get rid of me. I says, sir, put anything down that you like. And what he actually said was, Janet will stand up and argue with you if she's right. And she won't back down because she knows she's right. But if she's wrong, she will automatically apologise to you. So, yeah, and they didn't want me to go. So that was another thing. They said the door is always open to Sussex Police if you want to come back. So to me, as an older person, I don't think it really affected me that much with them. As I said, I think it was because I was a probationer that I got the stick.
Yeah.
I got the things left in my docket, you know, you want to call it bullying. It was.
We called it character building, I think. But
yeah, I was going to say that's what they used to say to me. It's character building. They gave me the number for the palace to ring up once. This person called you, and looking back at it, it sounds all. I mean, I know one girl threw herself down the stairs, and the sergeant's looking at me and says, "What happened, Janet?" I said, "I don't know, but I want to go back and work at Asda, please, because I've had enough of this."
Is that what you did before? Had you worked at Asda?
Yeah, when I was a special constable, I went into retail. So I went into retail and pubs. So I was a landlady, and you know, I was a trainer in Asda. I remember a guy coming in who I dealt with when I was a special constable. He was on the tills and he was a drug user, and he had his headphones on and he's like this and he's looking at me and he's trying to think, where do I know that face from? It's definitely not Aston. Obviously when I was in a special. So no, I being older didn't really affect me, but there was somebody that was on my intake that was 42 when he came in and he didn't last. He went after a year, so it wasn't for him. So no, I don't think being older I think it helped me. It helped me being able to communicate with people, as I said. And 9 times out of 10, I didn't use cuffs because they came with me. So.
And the thing is, if you're that much older, the person you're standing next to may have more years in the job, but that member of the public that you're dealing with will automatically gravitate to you because they think that because you're a bit older, you've got that more experience. So you're that guiding light, I suppose.
Yeah.
Had you dealt with conflict before prior to becoming a special constable? But I mean, being a landlady, I suppose you would have seen a few dust ups.
Yes, yes. I ejected a lot of people from the pubs we had, so it didn't faze me, conflict. It was only afterwards, when you sit back and you think, gosh, that really could have gone
Horribly wrong.
pear-shaped, but it didn't. But, and I know this is a bit sexist, but I find that females can talk to men in a different way than, say, a man coming up to talking to a man. Like I used to say, come on, you don't want to do that. Come on, let's go and do something better. Come on, why don't we just go home? That's a lot easier. So, and being a mum as well, sometimes you're dealing with children on the street, grown people acting like kids. So you can put your mother head on and say, come on, let's just go home. Or otherwise you're coming in the van. So it's up to you. The choice is yours, one or the other. So I think my mouth got me out of so much trouble. It was unbelievable. But I ended up with conflict. I ended up taking people to the floor. Me and my colleague once, this was in Nottingham, ended up taking this chap to the floor, but because he was so big, we couldn't get him up. So he was on his legs, I was on his back, and he's literally bench pressing me on his back. And I'm on the radio going, I never pressed the red button because that was like a failure. We go, can we have just a bit of help here, please? And all of a sudden, about 10 ran into the room, and we launched off, and they launched him up, and he was out into the van. So, yeah, sometimes the size wasn't good, if that makes sense. But I could knee strike with the best of them, but the spray was the best thing. I sprayed somebody, and she turned her head, so it hit her head. Custody sergeant says, Janet, you've got a bit more spray in that. Go in the yard and practice your aim a bit better because we need it in their face, not on the back of their head.
Oh, brilliant. What did your family think of you joining the job then? You had children.
Yeah, fantastic. My mum was fantastic. My brother was, don't come and knock on my door anymore. But he was joking. So, but my school had told my mum that I would never amount to anything. She didn't tell me that, but they said that. And I remember I just passed the interview at Lewis, so in Sussex. So Lewis was where the headquarters were. And I was in the car park and I said, Mum, I passed. And I want to go to my old school now and say, you can poke that right up your posterior because I have amounted to something.
So what was the transition like from Brighton to Nottingham? Because sometimes there's a rub when you go from one force to another.
Horrendous. It was like going back to life on Mars. I'd gone from one of the top performing forces to one of the bottom performing forces, basically. So, the in-car equipment where the control room could send you jobs, they had that in Sussex in 2006. Nottinghamshire Police didn't get that till years later. So I'd gone from this force that had loads of money to one that had none. Yeah. And I remember going into the CID office, and it was like life on Mars. It really was like I used to ring the control room or on the radio in the control room in Sussex and go, can I have a crime number? And they give it you. Then I got to Nottingham and we had to fill out C2 forms and then fax those forms, and they go to the control room, and then you'd get a crime number sent to you. It really was back in the day. And I remember saying to my mum, I've made a mistake, and she says stick with it. But I think a lot of transferees say that. And I remember taking a prisoner into Carlton Nick when that was open, Carlton Custody, and I had a low number. So I looked like a new one. I remember getting lifted and moved out of the way by cops in Nottingham because my number was low. And this custody sergeant said, are you enjoying it? Are you enjoying it? I went, Phew. And he went, you're a transferee, aren't you? I said, yeah, I am. He said, I said, how do you know? He says, because the new ones go, yeah, we're loving it, boss, we're loving it. And you just went like that. So it was difficult. They were a lot backwards. I can say that, can't I? They were back in time rather than Sussex Police. Yeah. I was a sexually trained officer, so I was a stow, and in Sussex, you would just take the victim for the examination and then hand the whole lot to CID. They did everything else then. All you did was transportation, stay with them, get the exhibits, book them in, off they go. In Nottinghamshire, I said, right, I'm being signed to this one. I've got signed to everyone. There was only me and one chap. We seemed to be the only solo officers in the entire force. And CID says, well, we need you to go and arrange the VRI with her. I said, what do you mean? I'm not a VRI. Yeah, you need to sort that. And then you need to do statements. And
so
then
for
you need to do
what's VRI? What is it?
Video recorded interview with the person. So don't ask me all the legislation now because it's totally gone out of the head. But certain people have the right to have their. So there's two ways of getting evidence into the court. So getting their what's it called? I've forgotten the word, but it's either by a statement written or it's by a video interview.
Yeah.
So if they write a statement, then they have to stand in the box and tell the court again what's in their statement.
Yeah.
But with a video interview, the video interview is played to the court, so they don't have to repeat what they've already said. But I used to say, but the defence and the prosecution will ask you questions around what you said. They're not going to ask you to repeat it again. So that's the difference. And there's certain crimes and vulnerabilities which will afford a person the right to have a video recorded interview.
Yeah.
And I am trained in doing those, but I much preferred the suspect interview to the victim interview, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, I understand that. When you're in Nottingham, why Nottingham, by the way? Is that because you're from Surrey, you joined Sussex? Why Nottingham?
My dad was from Nottingham, so my dad met my mum in the army because I was from Caterham in Surrey, which had a big barrack. So they met while my dad was in the army, and we all moved to Nottingham. They split when I was 9. I went back with my mum, and then at 18, I was 18. I went to live back in Nottingham with my dad. So that was the Nottingham connection.
So you're dealt with all sorts of things. You've been to death. What was that like, dealing with the death the first time?
First time, it's not nice. And I was a bit cheeky because I never actually examined a body. I always got somebody else to do it because I didn't want to touch them.
Yeah.
I know that sounds bad, but I just didn't. I think the first most traumatic thing I ever saw in my career was 6 months in, and a chap came out the house on fire. He set himself on fire. And that was the most, I think, rather than seeing somebody that's deceased, that was the most traumatic thing I saw. And I remember 3 months down in the line saying to one of my team, I'm not sleeping very well because every time I try and close my eyes, all I can smell is that smell.
Yeah.
And she went and told my sergeant, and he was lovely. Wiggy, we used to call him, Sergeant Wigglesworth, big Yorkshire man, and he'd go to me, Miss Percival, office. And the first thing I'd say was, what have I done now? He said, you've got to stop saying that. And he says, tell me why you're not sleeping. So we didn't have things like, the trim and stuff like that our cops have got. We didn't have any of that. And to be fair, I can talk about that because we weren't looked after in public protection at all with stuff that we dealt with. And he said, and he talked me through it. And he said, was you wondering why we were kind of joking and stuff like that, with the paramedics and the fire and all of this? And I was saying, yeah, I don't understand it. I can't understand that. And he said, that's how we deal. That's how we deal with it. So that was the most traumatic thing. I never touched the dead body because I was cheeky. I got everybody else to do it for me because I just didn't want to touch. I remember going with my DS and she said, Janet, it's just like touching your meat, your dinner. You wash your meat, so it's the same. And I said, yes, Sergeant, can you do this one, please? And she did. And then you were able to decompartmentise it. It was a job. And I remember my dad passed away and my ex-husband passed away within months of each other. Oh. And I went back to work and we were then sent to a drugs desk because CID was sent out to drugs desks. And I went and I viewed the body. I went with my colleague, and it was fine. I came back. My DI took me in the office and says, he said, Janet, I'm really, really sorry. I shouldn't have sent you. I said, why? He says, because you just had 2 deaths in your family. I went, yeah, but that's my family. This was work, and I could separate the two. So in the end, that's it. The man that was on fire traumatized me more than going to sudden death.
It's funny because I still, I mean, this is all about you, this is an interview, but funny enough, I remember everyone I went to, but I did go to a guy that by accident caught a light sitting by a fire. I remember that like it was yesterday. You know, it was 1987. It's horrendous. The smell, everything else, and you've still got that in your head, haven't you? You can still. It doesn't wake me up. I don't have any trauma over it. I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me or anything like that. But all these different things, and I just remember them. You know, fatal road collisions, first one I went to, all those sorts of things. They're just in there. But you do desensitize after a while, rightly or wrong. But it's your coping mechanism. We're all different, aren't we?
Yeah.
But you've gone through. You said about the sergeant's exam. Did you take the sergeant's exam?
I tried that 3 times. And the second one, the job let me down completely. Because I'm dyslexic, I was afforded a room.
Right.
To take it separately with an adjudicator there. They put me in the finance office in a room at the bottom, and all I could hear was the people talking. And then I came to the conclusion, I don't want to be a sergeant. I want to investigate. You know, when you're a sergeant, you have to take on everybody else's issues. I had to deal with my own issues, let alone the whole team. And they were sat behind. I mean, in the old days, my DS, when we was on the Inquisitive crime team, she used to come out with us. She'd be on jobs. She'd come into interviews. She was a tier 4 interviewer. So she taught me so much. I used to say, you didn't have to say anything. Then when you describe it, I used to say, but the second part's a bit of a catch. And she says, Janet, drop that. It's not a catch. You can't say anything in the caution is a catch. Okay, no. So she taught me loads. And then I noticed over time, sergeants stopped going out. They're behind the desk. They're on the computer. And I thought, I don't want to do that. I want to investigate crime. That's what I enjoyed to join the job to do. And the further the rank you went, the more you became managers. And I didn't want that, so I gave it as a bad thing being a sergeant for me.
Personally, I never used it as a vehicle not to deal with something. What I would do is I would select what I dealt with, whereas before it would be allocated to me as a DC. When I was a DS, I think, oh, that looks quite sexy. I'll dip my toe into that one. And I'd do what your DS did. I'd go and do, and then when I got to DI, I just had a bigger overview of investigations, and then I'd get allocated something that'd be, you know, quite different or interesting that I would then run. And then as a temporary DCI, it was similar. A lot of those were sort of complaint based or, you know, sensitive stuff. So there was always that ability or opportunity, I should say, to carry out investigations. When you go on to public protection, you're dealing with adult survivors.
Adult survivors. I did flip over to children sometimes. If they were overwhelmed, we'd be asked to deal with some children's jobs. But adult survivors of domestic violence, serious sexual offences, care home cases. We dealt with attempt murders as well. They would stick with us. We were drafted in on murder investigations as well. But yeah, I was on the adult side. I never really wanted to work with children. I did interview. I mean, the historical cases, I was dealing with adults that were abused as kids.
Yes.
So, there was that element. And my last case, the victims and all of that weren't even quite adult, if that makes sense, 16, 17, 18, but it came to us. He got 32 years inside for that case. So yeah, high risk DV, stalking, serious stalking, not. So we took high risk stalking. You've got medium risk, you've got standard risk, a bit like the DV, high, medium, standard. And as I said, serious sexual offences. Now, I never wanted to deal with serious sexual offences. So when I joined PP way back in 2014, we were all different teams.
Yes.
So you had your domestic violence team, you had your sexual offences team, you had your care home teams. And then they said that the rape teams were getting overwhelmed with jobs. So they amalgamated everything. So then we had to deal with sexual offences. And I remember I felt it very, very awkward to say certain parts of the body. My DS, she reviewed one of my VRIs and she says, Janet, yeah, I can see at the exact point you stop. Now I want you to go home and I want you to shout out those body parts until you feel comfortable saying them. And then I became very comfortable. And we had a saying on our team was, we didn't discuss body parts until after 8 o'clock in the morning. So nobody. So, and we used to get young cops come on and do attachments, and they used to look shocked at us. And I used to look at their faces and I said, you're shocked by the way we speak, aren't you? And they were, well, yeah. I said, this is how we deal with it. This is how we deal with this sort of crime. The stuff people are telling you, you can't look shocked. You have to have that pan face. And you're taking on that victim's trauma while you're listening to it.
Yeah.
And they got it. Some got it. Some did. Some were quite shocked by our language. And we had to tone it down a bit because we ended up having civilians working in there from the ISVA, so the Independent Sexual Violence Advisors.
Yeah.
And we used to have the IDVAs come in, the Independent Domestic Violence Advisors.
Yeah.
So we had to be careful. We had to know who our audience was in there. But yeah, I've had some traumatic jobs. And as I said, the care wasn't good.
No.
The care wasn't good for us. Once a year, they offered us an hour's counselling, mandatory counselling, once a year. And I used to sit there and go, what's that going to do for me?
Yeah.
How's that going to help? Well, you've got to go, Janet. Why have I got to go? Because it's mandatory.
Yeah.
So I used to go and have a lovely chat with the lady for an hour and then come out of that chat. So yeah, I dealt with some stuff that would make your curls crawl.
How did you feel? Because the stuff that you're talking about has got a high profile, isn't it? When someone gets 32 years, you will read that in the local media. So all those. How did you feel when you saw that? Because that's success, isn't it? That's what success looks like.
I felt for the victims. He was going not guilty until day one of the trial.
Right.
And then entered guilt. Well, no, we knew before. So I'd taken my laptop and phone home because I knew I'd got a trial on the month starting on the Monday. Yeah. And my phone kept going off on a Friday, and I thought, I'm not picking it up. Then I saw it was withheld, and I thought that's going to be something important. So it rang again, and it was the CPS lawyer, and she says, Janet, the defence have come to us, and they're offering us some guilty pleas. Now, when do the defence come to you when somebody's been charged with 27 serious sexual offences? They don't. So I'm going, well, we want all of these. And we went, yeah, we want all of those. So she got off the phone and she rang me back. She said, yeah, they're accepting what we want. We're going to have 22 of the offences with 5 to lay on file because he won't get no more. And this man said to me in the very first interview, he told me that the victim doesn't lie. And I said, so why she told me all of this? Well, I don't want to discredit her. I don't want to discredit her by telling you she lies. But all of this then, you're telling me this isn't true. Yeah, well, you're going to have to get to the bottom of it, aren't you, duck, in a real Nottingham accent. And when I went to court, we wanted the barrister to get it in there, but he didn't. I just turned round and I was looking at him like this. He was in the box and he was going guilty. And I wanted to shout across the court. I got to the bottom of it, didn't I, duck? Because he was going guilty, guilty. And he got quieter and quieter as it got guilty, 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 guilty. So when it went in the paper, it was a press release, but that didn't really sink in with me. It was for the victims.
Yeah,
The victims saying thank you to me. The older one came in with a card and flowers for me, and that meant more to me than the praise from the press or whatever for this man getting 32 years. And yeah, and during the Belfield case, I had to stop being put in the paper.
Yeah.
My name had to stop going out of there because of the abuse. But I was never one for the glory, if that makes sense. I got the accommodations, I got the the superintendent's award, I got investigator of the year. That meant nothing. But that card and those flowers, the card is with me in Costa Rica.
Is it?
But all my certificates are with my mum. So that kind of tells you more that I joined the job not to get the praise, but to lock the bad people away. It's cliche. That's what we say. We want to lock the bad people away and help the victims, and that's what I did it for. So
32 years. Some look, I know coppers that have gone 30 years, and the amount of people they've locked up over those 30 years hasn't come to 32 years. They've never dealt with anything that's had that sort of substantial sentence.
And I was on my own. So I wasn't a team. That was me on my own.
Wow. What's the name?
So our superintendent did a speech. How they do a speech when you leave? And he'd been a homicide DI, and his career had been in homicide, and he'd come to public protection. And he said, my biggest case was 30 years. Janet got 32 years. I had a team behind me. Janet had her. Yeah. So that said it. But the judge did say in sentencing, we're not America, because if we was, you'd be getting 172 years now for your offences. So it was big, but I was just glad he went away, and I was glad I got to the bottom of it, because that was the challenge he set me. Get to the bottom of it, Doug, and I did.
What was the name of the suspect?
Keith Wayne.
Keith Wade.
Keith Wayne. Yeah, Wayne. Wain. Wayne.
Let's hope he listens to this, and he can get to the bottom of it, Duck, can't he?